On today's show, will The Incredibles 2 be the best Pixar sequel since Cars 2? Scarlett Johansson and Taika Waititi are teaming up for a new movie, and did Sinead DeFries fake being sick just to get donuts? Find out on Movie Talk. I was really good at faking sick when I was a kid.
I believe that.
My dad never knew I was sick, but my mom always knew. And it's weird because my dad has the medical degree. Go figure. That is T. That is Haleigh Foutch, Clarke Wolfe. I am Mark Ellis, filling in for the book Sinead DeFries. She is actually under the weather right now, so we send all of our best well wishes and our donut dreams to Miss DeFries. Get better soon. Love to see you back on the desk. In the meantime, we have a very action-packed show today with a bunch of news, kicking off with some Stephen King stuff in the works, and that is from director of Aquaman, James Wan's production company, Atomic Monster. Wan and company are going to be pitching a new version of his 1987 science fiction horror thriller book, The Tommyknockers. Now, Tommyknockers was a 1993 miniseries that I never rented at Video Update, though I did consider it many times, and now that is being taken out to a number of different studios, so it could be a major motion picture release in theaters, or it could land at a streaming service such as a Netflix. My take on this is that a lot of times you see a new writer and they have some sort of novel that gets adapted, and then everybody wants a piece of them in Hollywood. Everybody wants to see whatever they've written and make that into a movie, and usually it doesn't end up all that well. Nicholas Sparks started out great, and now the name Nicholas Sparks is a very certain demographic of people who want to see that movie, and everybody else uses it as a punchline. Stephen King is not that person. Stephen King has been through the ropes, and we've had a lot of bad Stephen King adaptations in our time, and now it seems like we're going to start to get some really good ones. Look at it. It was a movie that was a long time in the works. You had a TV miniseries of that, and then you had the adaptation that came out last year and took the world by storm. Clarke Wolfe, am I just putting on rose-tinted glasses in my excitement for Tommyknockers? Am I forgetting about The Dark Tower, or is there a reason to be pumped up for this particular sci-fi adaptation?
You mean rose-red colored glasses? Oh,
I see what you did there.
Okay, so here's my take on this. I think, and I hope that this is what proved to be true, and this is what I was hoping for when it came out. Unlike the slew of Stephen King adaptations that were not so good that we got in the late 80s and through the 90s, I think what it has proven is that if you adapt great material and great horror material and you take it seriously, which WB and New Line did, you can make an incredible product. And we've seen this before, not only with Carrie or Misery, but I think that's sort of what's reinvigorating this trend. So yes, Stephen King is a household name, and yes, but I think the difference is that in the 80s and early 90s, people were adapting his stuff because he was the #1 pop culture writer, and because it was just like, yeah, sure, make a movie out of that, whatever. Whereas I think now people are starting to take more care, not only with genre in general, but I think with Stephen King's work more specifically. I'm really excited for Castle Rock to see what they do as well. So I actually think that this is great, and I think when you have big players like James Wan on board and sort of steering the ship, he's not going to mess with his brand in a way where he would carelessly adapt something because it's Stephen King. I think he would only be on board if he really wanted to, or he heard a good take that they were willing to shop out there.
Right. I mean, Wan is going to be working on it with fellow producer Roy Lee. We're not sure if Wan is actually going to take the directing reins on this or just merely produce it through his company, Atomic Monster. Haleigh, when you look at the premise of something like Tommyknockers, which is a town shocking in Maine, is where it's going to take place. There's this mysterious gas leak from an alien ship, or it's a substance not of Earth is getting into people, and it's affecting them, and they gain these special abilities, except for one person who's got a steel plate in their head, and he's not affected by it, so he sees the weird things happening and has to put a stop to it. Does this sort of premise lend itself to a cinematic quality, or do you think it's better as a novel?
I think this is a great premise. The fundamentals are fantastic, and they're not particularly original. There's a lot of Lovecraft in there. King is borrowing. But it's an interesting choice because Stephen King himself has called it an awful book. Like, I think it's his least favorite book. And what he says is, and he said this multiple times throughout his career, there are like 600 too many pages in it. That may be a byproduct of the cocaine that he was battling at the time. It is, he's confirmed that. But what's interesting is the idea that there is a root story in there, that 300 words that can be worked with. And I think it's really the talent involved that's exciting. I think James Wan knows a good story when he sees one. And Roy Lee is writing off the success of It. I mean, he clearly knows what to do with Stephen King or knows how to help get the right Stephen King adaptation done.
Yeah, and you start to think about, if somebody like James Wan or Roy Lee is like, hey, I want to make this movie, you said, well, maybe there is something there, because I look at a Stephen King premise like Sleepwalkers, right? It was an early 90s movie. At the time, I really liked it, but that's a harder movie to sell to the public than something like It, T, which you see the trailer for It, you see a scary clown hiding behind a balloon, and you're like, I know exactly what this is. It looks terrifying. You may not know every detail about the plot, but you know the basics. With Sleepwalkers, cat people, and then the mom is going to make out with the son, and it's going to be weird, and somebody's going to get stabbed with a stalk of corn. That's a harder movie to sell. So is this an easy movie to sell to the public, or do you think there's going to have to be a hedge we got to get over?
I think that the premise sounds interesting. I agree with what a lot of Haleigh said, in that it really depends on the talent involved at the adaptation level, because if it has good bones, and I do think, based on what I've read about the premise, the bones are there. I also have not read Tommyknockers. I work on the internet. What is books? But I do think that based on the synopsis, it could be good. It really has everything to do with the talent aligning in the right way to turn this into something that actually works visually, because it could be very visual, but it could also be like, what is it? What is exactly going on in this teaser? I don't really understand what this trailer is. Not sure I want to see it. Whereas you have, Pennywise, he's a really striking linchpin to kind of hang your hat on for a trailer, and it almost does all the work for you. Once you see him, you're just like, oh, okay, I kind of get this. I'm in. Whereas with something a little bit more complicated and complex, it might make for a more interesting project overall, but harder to market.
Yeah, so Larry Sinitsky is another producer that they're teaming up with. He actually produced the original miniseries that came out in the early 90s. And according to him, I mean, this is an allegorical story about the dangers of relying on nuclear power too much, or the evolution of technology speeding up faster of a rate than we can keep up with it. I like that that's a premise that can certainly translate itself to our modern world, but I do fear that this is just going to be lumped into something that's just like another X-Men feeling thing, where there's just too many mutants. I mean, we even covered a trailer yesterday that it looks like an X-Men movie, and it's produced by 20th Century Fox, but it's not an X-Men movie. So, Clarke, do you think that we're just getting too inundated with people who have special abilities, and this is just going to fall by the wayside in the wake of all these superhero movies that come out where we get to see people with special abilities?
That's really interesting. That's really good. You should host this show, Mark.
I didn't ask that in the pre-production meeting either. That was a special fastball.
That was a
for Miss
special
Wolfe.
fastball. But I think that there are ways to do the elevated human story differently. And I think at the end of the day, what audiences gravitate towards, especially when you're talking about like a superhero-esque or mutant-esque type character, and you see there are ways to sort of branch off and do things just a little differently, I think that they're responding to, at the core, the human struggle. And I think that's what makes superheroes work in general. And so I think with something like this, when you have an added genre element, like specifically horror genre element, or when you have a James Wan added element, I think it's going to be differentiated enough to where audiences will go, that's not just another elevated human story. It's a scary movie that I want to go see.
Yeah, T, you and Haleigh both touched on how you're excited about the people involved in making this version of it. So is James Wan the selling point for you as of right now, or is it the actual storyline where it's another flick where we get to see mutants with special powers?
I think it's both. I think that I like the premise, as I was saying earlier, and I also like James Wan being involved because, I mean, he's got a proven track record, in my opinion. So I feel like the stars could be aligning in a good way here. It's really just a kind of wait and see thing, because that doesn't always mean things work out. And even though I know it ended up being a box office smash, like, I didn't love it. I liked it. There were a lot of things I liked about it, but I also had like a few issues with it. So, not everything is going to be perfect for everyone, even if all the nuts and bolts are there initially.
Haleigh, where do you see Stephen King's star right now as far as being able to sell a movie, just that it's based on Stephen King material? Is it still very hit or miss? Is it still, does it rely solely on the name of the title, or does Stephen King's name still hold some clout? Because like I mentioned, you had It come out and everybody loved it, but a month before we had The Dark Tower and nobody liked it.
Yeah, I think last year was a phenomenal example of how Stephen King, the material itself is not going to determine what happens, because we didn't just have those films, we also had The Mist on TV. Mm-hmm. There were a number of projects last year that, The Mist is a fantastic short story. It's a phenomenal film, was not a good TV show. So it's really what you do with what King put on the page. I did want to jump back a little bit to your point about the mutants, because one of the interesting things about the story is they're not just heightened, you know, they don't just have powers, they also develop a hive mind. And I think that's something that's going to set it apart a little bit. They've got that creepy alien infiltrating society vibe going on that's, you know, not quite there in the X-Men or even that Tim Burton movie,
Peregrine? Miss
Peregrine, yeah. This is something that brings a different angle on that
So
approach.
an alien hive mentality, that's like they just want to hang out with each other and then they just want to like infiltrate our society but not really let us know that they're infiltrating us? Is that what a hive mentality is?
Yeah, people sort of starting to think the same as each other, behave the same as each other, connected.
Like Twitter.
And
Yes. Twitter is the real life hive mentality.
Oh boy, that's gonna be that's gonna be one that's a little relevant to our current day.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about a hive mentality, and that scares me.
That's why I'm not on there.
You know, as somebody who's watching a movie, and I'm like, oh boy, that's something that I want to go see. That's a story I want to be told in a horror setting. And then you do have the added attraction to a lot of folks that this is gonna have some people with heightened abilities. What are those heightened abilities gonna be? Heightened abilities, sometimes they can be used for a horror premise like this. Sometimes it can be a family-friendly flick, which is what we have in our next story, and that is The Incredibles 2 having a new TV trailer as we ramp up the inevitable ad campaign for any sort of Pixar movie. It seems like everybody's very excited about the new Pixar property because it is The Incredibles finally getting the sequel that a lot of people have been clamoring for well over a decade. In this new clip, we clearly see that the husband is the stay-at-home dad, and then we have the mother, voiced by Holly Hunter, that is out there still fighting crime. It looks hilarious to me. I like this little new short clip that we are talking about here. Haleigh, you see something like The Incredibles 2. What do you think in terms of this being a sequel for Pixar, who has a hit and miss track record with their sequels?
I'm hoping, because you're right, it is hit and miss, and mostly miss.
And I should throw prequels in there too, because Monsters U was a follow-up, but it was a prequel.
Right. You know, obviously the Toy Story sequels are phenomenal, but the rest not so much. My hope with this is that they have taken their time with this film. This is, I mean, my gosh, how old were you when this came out?
I was 4.
Yeah.
I was Jack's age.
It's been a while, and they've taken time. They've got, you know, a lot of the original team back. They've got the original director, writer. That is my hope here, that it will not be Cars 2.
I mean, Cars 2, I like Finding Dory, so I mean, if you get me into the theater, T, and I'm watching a Pixar movie, I'm going to be genuinely happy. I mean, I even like the Cars sequels. That's me. I have not seen The Incredibles in such a long time that when we were all watching this clip before the show, I was like, wait, isn't Frozone the bad guy? And everybody's like, no, and then Clark's like, you're thinking of Unbreakable. Yeah, so
spoilers, I guess.
I get my Samuel L. Jackson movies confused. Are you looking forward to Incredibles 2? Do you think it's going to be one of the hits for Pixar's sequel legacy?
I suppose. I mean, Haleigh pointed out that they've taken their time with it, but they also took a pretty long time with Monsters U. I mean, that was quite a bit after Monsters Inc., and it was just kind of a shrug. You know, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't Monsters Inc. by any stretch. So I think with this one, I mean, it is encouraging that a lot of the same team is there. And the nice thing about animation is you'll never know that everyone's 10 to 15 years older because it's just their voices. So that's kind of nice. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I feel like it looks like it'll be fun, but I don't know. I'm not really super jazzed about it because I do have a lot of skepticism when it comes to sequels.
Yeah, Clarke, I mean, it can be viewed either way where, we're so excited to welcome back The Incredibles, or it feels a little bit like a cash grab. Where does The Incredibles 2, where do you think it's going to fall in your Pixar bracket?
Well, I actually am, surprise, and have a little bit of a controversial opinion here. I didn't love the first Incredibles movie. I know. I liked it. I thought it was fine, but it wasn't this, like, you know, monumental movie for me that it was for a lot of people. And so what I say that to say that these trailers, I've loved them. I think they look really fun. And I think one of the things that's more promising about a follow-up Incredibles movie that they're showing us is it actually feels just like another day in the life of this family. It doesn't feel like, I have to come up with some big, grand, crazy thing and like fit all these characters back in there. I feel like we're just seeing the next step in what this family is up to. And I think think that's why it has the possibility or potential to actually really be a stand on its own movie, which is exciting to me.
And then you look at the box office, because I don't think that there's a lot coming out this summer that's going to compete with The Incredibles 2 for the family-going dollar. You have Hotel Transylvania the following month, but Incredibles landing in June, that's a great spot for it. The only thing that could really frighten The Incredibles 2 is the fact that Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom comes out a couple weeks later. Even that, I don't see the hype for that movie mounting to what The Incredibles is, simply because, a lot like when Jurassic World came out and we hadn't seen dinosaurs on a screen for so long, now we need to see them again. This kind of feels like that with The Incredibles, although I'm with you, Clarke. I like the first Incredibles a lot. I didn't think it was the best Pixar movie I've ever seen. I went on a date to see The Incredibles at midnight the night it opened, because my date really wanted to see The Incredibles, and I really wanted to see the Revenge of the Sith trailer that was debuting in theaters that night. Had to get that first look at what Mustafar actually appears to be. Haleigh, where does The Incredibles, the first movie for you, rank in your Pixar lineage of favorites?
I'm actually with you guys. I think I like it a bit more than you, and I think it's a really solid movie. I don't necessarily know if it holds up as well now that we've been through the superhero boom of the last, 15 years. It's a great movie. It's not my favorite Pixar movie. It wouldn't be top 5 for me.
Are you more of a Toy Story kind of person? If I had to hold your feet, did you do the Pixar Disney bracket that everybody else did this week?
Yeah, I did. It was Toy Story versus Beauty and the Beast for me.
Ooh, that's
Yeah.
the first Toy Story?
Yes.
That's good. See, I had
Yeah.
Coco knocking out Toy Story 3, I think, in the first
snap.
round. So Coco actually made it all the way to the final. We did this yesterday on the show, and Coco ended up going up against The Lion King, and I still am not sure who's going to take the cake there. T, did you do the bracket? Where would The Incredibles, the first one, rank up there for you?
I did not do the bracket, and I also did not know you were in love with the Coco, but I...
Oh, the Coco hit me hard.
The Incredibles would not be anywhere near the top for me. I mean, oddly enough, I'm a big Ratatouille guy. I love Ratatouille. That might be my favorite Pixar movie, period. And I also really do love the original Monsters, Inc. rather than Monsters University. As far as the Disney, drawn animation, that's what I really love. I mean, I've said it so many times on Collider and even on Schmoes Know, like, I'm old school. I love drawn animation. It just feels a lot more warm to me, and whereas CG animation feels a lot colder. So even there, I'm kind of off the beaten path. I love Peter Pan, Robin Hood. Those are probably my top 2, and Sword in the Stone rounding out my top 3.
I knew there was something missing from the Disney bracket, Clarke, and I couldn't put my finger on it yesterday. Robin Hood. Where the hell?
Obsessed.
Everybody was saying, where's Wreck-It Ralph? Wreck-It Ralph's great. I'd like to see Wreck-It Ralph too. Robin Hood is the movie that got robbed off that bracket.
Got Robin Hood.
Yes.
So no, I love Robin Hood too, and I love the old school hand drawn animation as well. But my favorite Pixar movie is Bug's Life. I love Bug's Life. It just makes me laugh.
That's
I
a
think
hot
it's
take.
Old school.
I think it's really funny. Like, I actually just think it's hilarious and very cute, and I like the way all the bugs look. So it's just like, yeah, I still love Bug's Life.
Yeah, I'm more of an ants guy. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You want the fastest way to ruin a dinner party?
Yeah.
Just open with
Controversial.
that. When the
That's
salad
better
gets
than
served.
B movie.
True.
B movie, Seinfeld. All right, I remember that too. I just got a lot of useless movie trivia knowledge in my head that apparently doesn't translate to Schmodown victories anymore. So we're going to move on to our next story, and that is the new trailer for Terminal. Not The Terminal, starring Tom Hanks. This is called Terminal, and it stars Margot Robbie, amongst other luminaries, in a very film noir suspense thriller kind of setting. The thriller is described as the first look of showing off the twisting plot in film's visuals. Now, obviously, they didn't give away any of the plot twists in this trailer, but it looks like there's going to be a lot of turns that this movie takes. Some interesting, some, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. It also stars Simon Pegg, Dexter Fletcher, Mike Myers, yes, that Mike Myers, and Max Irons. It opens in theaters on May 11th. T, you checked out this trailer. Is this something you're looking forward to?
I'm very conflicted about this trailer because it's like the blueprint of like, this is a movie for T. Like, it's just like, it doesn't have anybody with superpowers. It doesn't have any space travel. I don't know. I really love this type of movie, but it also feels very derivative in a lot of ways. It feels like a mashup of like every Guy Ritchie movie and maybe a couple other directors thrown in. And I thought it was very, very peculiar how you're watching this trailer and then they're like, oh, by the way, Mike Myers is in it. Like, he's in it for literally the shot when they're like, and Mike Myers. And you're just like, wait, what? And then they go back to the trailer. Like, let's pretend that didn't happen. I just thought it was very peculiar. I know Mike Myers hasn't been in many things for quite a while, and I thought it was because he was just Scrooge McDucking it in all of his money from Shrek. But I've also heard that perhaps he's not the most pleasant person to work with, and maybe there's some bad blood there. I don't know. Maybe I'm, creating a rumor that shouldn't even exist. But it seems to me that the trailer has potential, but I'm not completely sold.
See, my take on Mike Myers is that I think that he just is very particular about what he wants in the movies that he's, producing or starring in, or the vehicles that he's driving. So he has things that he wants done a certain way, and obviously that can lead to a lot of people thinking, oh, maybe he's a little too prickly. My question about Mike Myers to you, and then I want to ask everybody on the table's take, is do you think that this movie has an added value because somebody like Mike Myers, who has not been in movies recently, wanted to do this movie? Does it feel like, oh, maybe this has something special about it, or does it just feel like, hey, I got to get my name out there, I got to go do something with my day?
I don't think Mike Myers is going to put more asses in the seats, if I'm honest with you. I think if people already like him, they'll be like, oh, cool, but they're not going to go see this movie because Mike Myers is in it.
Okay, I wanted to believe that a lot of people are going to go see this movie because they see the name Mike Myers. Haleigh, am I crazy? Am I looking at this with Austin Powers glasses on?
Yeah, I think you've got big old hippie glasses on.
Yeah, probably.
I think maybe it has a little creative cachet because he wants to do it. Like you said, he hasn't wanted to make a film in quite a while, so there's something there that must have lured him in. Likewise, we talked about the teaser on last week's Movie Talk, and it was, the appeal for me was really Margot Robbie's interest. Again, it's a little bit of creative cachet that she wanted to make this her second producing effort after I, Tonya. But I'm definitely with T. I am not sold by this trailer. It's, again, like the teaser, beautiful cinematography, a lot of exciting things to look at, but nothing that I really sunk my teeth into and felt like I could chew on and just devour and get hyped about.
Yeah, Clarke, if I'm going to label myself as a certain type of viewer, I don't really like darkly lit neon lights. I think that's my issue watching movies. There's just a lot of movies that I see and they look, you hear words like stylish and neo-noir and stuff like that, and that doesn't look like something that I want to see because I've seen so many movies that have let me down that have that particular lighting scheme where it's like a darkly lit room, but you have like one bright neon light. It's the same way that the Mute trailer looked for Netflix, and I'm just like, it doesn't get me excited to see the movie. What is wrong with me? Do you have the same affliction?
No, I don't. I don't know what's wrong with you, but nothing's wrong with you. You're perfect just the way you are.
You and my mom believe that. Nobody else.
What's interesting about this trailer to me is that tonally it feels all over the place. I can't tell if it's sort of a takeoff on Noir or if there's some sort of really black humor involved. I think that if we're talking about the Mike Myers of it all, I actually could hear Mike Myers in this trailer before because he's doing his Scottish accent, if I'm not mistaken, and so I was like, that sounds like Mike Myers doing his Scottish accent. Oh, there it is. And he seems to only show up when he's under heavy prosthetics, which is fine, but it's interesting. But yeah, tonally, this one felt kind of all over the place. I couldn't really tell if the intention was to sort of, spin the neo-noir femme fatale on its head, or if it was just sort of falling into all of those tropes again. Because anytime they would do something that was a little dark or led me to believe that Margot Robbie's character was going to be something different or something interesting, that it kind of cut right back to the sex appeal and the look at this hot woman who's our femme fatale, and it's like, okay, well, which so it's kind of like, to me, it's like how I felt about the Atomic Blonde trailer. I was like, what is this exactly? Like, are you telling me that this is Lady John Wick and she's a badass, or are you telling me, but also here's her making out with another beautiful woman, and this is targeted at the men in the audience? Now, I've seen Atomic Blonde. I mean in the trailer. I don't mean in the actual movie.
That trailer
like,
also a lot of darkly lit.
I like Atomic Blonde a lot, and I know their relationship is way more important than that. I'm saying when the first trailer came out, to me, it looked like this weird male fantasy kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm getting with this.
You do have a point too, because I believe the tagline on the poster is "Revenge never looked so good."
Exactly. Yeah, and that's at the end of the trailer as
Oh,
well.
is it?
So
Yeah.
so they're definitely trying to sell us something. I'm just unclear on what it is.
They're not talking about Mike Myers under the prosthetics.
Starring Mike Myers
Looking
and
so
Margot
good.
Robbie.
He's great as his dad in So I Married an Axe Murderer. It's like maybe the best part of that movie, which isn't that good, but him playing his dad is, look, Mike Myers is great, everybody. And then everybody else in the movie, I'm sure, is going to be fine too. But this does seem like something where it's just, it's a lot of things coming together. It's a lot of different storylines that are going to interweave. Maybe that's where my apprehension comes from, because I see this lighting, I hear a storyline like this, and I just think it's like a darker version of Inherent Vice, which is a movie that I just have such PTSD from. I didn't understand it. I hated it. I'm sure did anybody like Inherent Vice?
I didn't.
You did? Okay. Yeah, can you,
Busted.
after the show, let's have a conversation. You
Yeah.
can explain to me just what happened in the movie, because I might have fallen asleep at one point.
Oh boy.
So you can walk me through.
Yeah, I'll help you out.
All right. This is why we do the panel, because we have people with differing opinions that can come together and help make me a better movie viewer, because I still like Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze. Our next
Wow.
story is going to be Scarlett Johansson teaming up with Taika Waititi, but this is not going to be in the MCU. Far from it. It's actually going to go from a place like Asgard all the way back to Earth, particularly Germany during World War II. Scarlett Johansson is going to play the mother of a young German boy. The German boy is not aware that his mom is also helping to harbor a young Jewish girl. When that comes to a head, a lot of zaniness and silliness ensues. And yes, I say zaniness and silliness because this is portrayed as somewhat of a comedy, particularly because the young German boy, who is the son of Scarlett Johansson's character, has an imaginary friend that he talks to help him cope with some of these things. The imaginary friend is going to be played by Taika Waititi, and he is going to be a silly version of Adolf Hitler. That's your log line. And the name like Taika Waititi and Scarlett Johansson get this movie made. The film is called Jojo Rabbit, and I believe it was discussed on the panel a couple weeks ago before Scarlett Johansson was cast. So this is all new information to me, hearing about this for the first time. And then I hear Scarlett Johansson on top of it. So naturally, I'm intrigued. Just her pairing with Taika Waititi. Haleigh, is that the selling point of the movie to you, or do you actually buy into what this premise could be? It could be a little off the beaten path.
I totally buy into this premise. I'm a huge Taika Waititi fan. I love all of his New Zealand films, and this the synopsis sounds a lot to me like Boy, one of his older films in which he played the actual father of this young boy, but the boy would also envision his father as this sort of 1980s figure, like Michael Jackson guy. So he was both the dad and the Michael Jackson figure. And I see that a lot as a sort of repeated motif in this idea of silly Hitler. I think that's probably not what this movie is going to be like. Like, oh, the Holocaust, oh, ho, ho, so funny. That's not Taika Waititi. That's not what he's going to do. It's going to be smart. And I think if he did an amazing job with Ragnarok, but most of his films before that toe a very fine line between very funny and very sad. And I think that's what we're going to get here.
Yeah, I mean, World War II, particularly Europe in World War II, not known as the hotbed of comedic films, but
No.
you do have people that have made efforts with that. Like the Robin Williams movie, Jacob the Liar, was an attempt to do stuff like that. When you see a movie that it's just people trying to make other people laugh in wartime, like Life is Beautiful, this is not that. This seems like something that's a little more imagination-based, and that the real life events are going to be in stark contrast to what is going on with this young boy and his imaginary friend, simply because when you're going through something like that, you probably need an imaginary pal to rely on, T. So you hear about this movie, and then Scarlett Johansson joining on to it. What does that do for you?
ScarJo, I don't really have strong feelings about her one way or the other, but I've been intrigued by this premise since we talked about it on the show a couple weeks back, because it's the type of thing where you hear the log line and you're just like, oh, ooh. But if anybody can pull off such a tricky premise, I feel like it's Taika Waititi. And I do think, in a way, it somewhat reminds me a little bit of Life is Beautiful, in that it was a very stark, sad environment, but it was someone trying to create levity within that for someone else. So I feel like it's kind of got a similar dynamic there. And I love Taika Waititi's New Zealand films as well. I'm very interested in the fact that he's playing silly Hitler, which is just a phrase I never thought I would say in my life. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely putting a lot of pressure on himself, not only to tackle this premise, but to play the Hitler role. Perhaps it was the role he was born to play. We'll see. But I'm very excited for it, I have to say, because I'm just so fascinated by how are they going to pull this off.
It's been done before in a very different way with the producers with Springtime for Hitler, but I do like that Taika Waititi is playing that role as well, because if you're just directing the movie and you hire somebody to play this role that could be interpreted as controversial, and again, you wait to see how it actually plays out, what the trailer looks like, what the actual movie entails, but I like that he's saying, no, I'm directing this movie. I know how I want this to go. This is a very narrow window to get right, so I think I'm going to be the one to do it. And he's proven he's got a great sense of humor in his other movies, like we all mentioned. Clarke, do you like this play for Scarlett Johansson as well as Taika Waititi?
I do. So a couple of weeks ago when we first talked about this, there was a piece of the story that we haven't really brought up, and it was that the little boy has lost his father, and he's susceptible. He wants to join the Hitler Youth. So he's like very susceptible to what is going on in Nazi Germany, and he discovers allegedly that, again, we've had so many weird plot synopses for this film that I don't know what the exact linear plot is, but apparently he discovers that his mom has been hiding a Jewish girl in their house. And so it's like very confusing for him in terms of his ideology and what he believes. So I thought then, and I think now, that Taika is like one of the most perfect people to tackle this, because I think that this is going to be a fine line, obviously, when you mix the very dark humor, but also the sadness. As I know from my third or fourth edition of Adam Sandler's Hanukkah song, Scarlett Johansson is one of the chosen people, and so I think that it's actually really cool that that's something that it's something you might not know in general, but it's something that I know, that this is a project that she is taking, that she's deciding to be a part of as a Jewish person, and so I think that actually adds, in addition to her star power and her cachet and her talent, I think she is a very talented actress. That element also kind of makes me go, oh, that's cool. I kind of want to see what this is all about.
Yeah, and let's talk about her just as a box office draw for a minute, because she is, I think she actually is ranked, because of the help from the MCU as well, as like the highest grossing female of all time at the box office. And she's also opened movies well herself, even if they didn't get all the critical acclaim in the world. Like something like Lucy had a nice opening weekend. Rough Night was not a critically acclaimed comedy, but she's good in it, and she has a lot of range as an actress. Do you like this play for her, Haleigh, as far as she'll be coming off of Infinity War and probably another MCU movie? There's been rumors forever that a Black Widow movie is going to get off the ground eventually. So as far as her doing a big movie and then going to something like this, does this seem more like the dramatic, I need to get my my Academy Award level clout back into shape?
I think throughout her career, Scarlett Johansson has sort of been one of the best examples of like one for them, one for me. Not that I think she probably does everything for herself. She has obviously a very clear idea of where she wants her career to be, but she has always balanced blockbusters with indie film, drama, critically acclaimed cinema work. She's great. But I do think her being involved in this definitely announces it as like, oh, it's that kind of a movie. Like, this is a movie they want, everybody in Iowa to go see or whatever. They don't want this just to be like in the cities, limited release for the cinephiles. That's what her, being cast in it says to me.
Is this heaven? No, this is Iowa, and we get to see Jojo Rabbit. My favorite Scarlett Johansson performance, and one that I think it's arguable that she could have been nominated for it, though it would have been controversial, is her.
Yeah.
Because you never see her, but she's so good in that movie.
Again, controversial opinions with Clarke Wolfe. I hate that movie. I really don't like that. I have a lot of problems with it, but I will say, the performances are great, and she blew me away with her just voice performance. She's one of those actresses that I think we sleep on, because it's like, yeah, she's Black Widow, or yeah, she shows up in the Coen Brothers movies and cool, whatever. But she when it comes down to raw talent and skill and diverse, meaning the types of roles that she is able to pull off, I think she's one of her generation's, if not best. I think she's right up there. Okay,
so I have a 10 a.m. with Haleigh for Inherent Vice, and then I can squeeze you into a 10:30 when you and I can debate about her.
Deal.
See, do you and I have any bones to pick today as far as our taste in movies?
Not yet, but there's still time.
There's still time. We got one topic left, and then we're going to take some of your live Twitter questions. Go ahead and start tweeting us right now at Collider Video. Use the hashtag Collider Movie Talk. In the meantime, we move on from a character in an MCU movie to a character who led the Wolverine franchise. Hugh Jackman is eyeing a role in Bad Education. It's the next picture from La La Land producer Fred Berger, and it's going to be directed by Corey Finley, who recently directed the film Thoroughbreds. Is getting a lot of acclaim on the festival circuit, particularly Sundance. So the premise for this is largely under wraps, but insiders for Variety are saying that it has an election feel to it, and it's based on true events that writer Mike Makowski experienced at his high school. Like we said, the La La Land producer Fred Berger and Brian Kavanaugh Jones of Automatic are going to produce it with a release date yet to be determined. So Hugh Jackman taking on a role. Again, we don't know what the starring role is going to be. It's called Bad Education. It's got an election feel. Clarke Wolfe, where are you leaning on this one?
Good. I feel good about it. I love Thoroughbreds. Did you see it at Fantastic Fest?
Yeah,
we
I
saw it
with
at Fantastic Fest. Yeah, together. And I think it's so great. It was my favorite thing I saw at that festival last year.
And it's a very dark comedy.
Yes.
Is Thoroughbreds, so maybe the same kind of feel here.
Yeah, that's what I would gather. And I want to see, sort of like we were talking about with Scarlett Johansson, I love Hugh Jackman. I think Hugh Jackman is very talented, and I like when he sort of breaks outside his feel-good, box. Prisoners is a great example of him doing something that's different and really powerful, and not that, Greatest Showman or even Wolverine, like everyone's favorite curmudgeonly superhero. So I love this pairing together, and I'm very excited to see it.
You say Hugh Jackman's very talented. I say Hugh Jackman is the most talented. He might be the most talented. Maybe he got some of that alien nerve gas in Tommyknockers, because the guy he just operates on another level. He can sing, he can dance, he's got adamantium claws. It just makes me puke, T. Hugh Jackman, are we going to fight about this, or do you like this role for him as well, just as far as his career goes?
I like any role for Hugh Jackman, and I always go back to the old SNL, like, two sides. Like, he can do anything, you know what I mean? And, we have seen him play both sides. We've seen him most recently in The Greatest Showman, and before that, I think it was Logan. So, I mean, if that's not the perfect representation of him, kind of one for you, one for me, and yet both are really for him, I think similar to Scarlett Johansson, he seems to have used his success to really craft his career to do only the projects that he really wants to do and that he really believes in. And he also just seems like a really great guy, and people are probably just like throwing him awesome projects all the time. So I do take notice when he picks what he decides to do, and especially now with him being on this sort of like, well, I'm done with Wolverine, so what's next for me? I'm very curious to see like what's next, and I'm glad that this is sounding very mysterious and interesting.
What's immediately next for Hugh Jackman is a movie called The Front Runner, where he's playing Senator Gary Hart, and it's leading up to that 1988 presidential election that he was competitive in until he was caught in a scandalous love affair. Oh, if only times were still that simple, when that was the biggest political news of the day. Do you like this play for Bad Election? Because it seems like he's probably going to be playing some sort of teacher in this movie. Bad Education. It's going to feel like election, set in high school. Hugh Jackman in a principal role and a teacher role. Do you like this for him?
I do. I'm really excited by this idea. Like Clarke said, we saw this at Fantastic Fest, and we both absolutely loved it. I gave it just like a rave review on the Collider site.
For Thoroughbreds?
Yeah, Thoroughbreds.
Yeah.
And I can't think of anything, I might be forgetting of anything in Hugh Jackman's career where he's got to play with super dark humor before. And I think that's an exciting move for him. And I think T really hit it, like this next phase, this post-Wolverine phase. I'm super excited to see what he does. So far, it seems like he's leaning in more like darker, dramatic territory, stepping away from the blockbusters and the musicals a little bit. I'm sure we'll see him back in no time shimmying around, and we'll love it very much. But I love this. I love the idea of him doing some snappy, jazzy, dark humor. That's a fun look I don't think we've seen on him a lot.
That's right. So we'll have to keep our eye on Bad Education. The other movie where he plays Gary Hart, The Front Runner, is coming out later this year and is expected to be a top award contender. Like I said, keep tweeting us your live questions right now at Collider Video. You can catch me tonight and tomorrow night at the Comedy Store. I'm in the main room tonight, the original room tomorrow. It's my favorite club. Then I'm on the road for about a month. T, you are also doing something some sort of stand-up performance-based material, where can the kids catch you?
Dueling comedy shows. I am going to be at a pop-up show at Crux in Atwater Village tomorrow night. Today is Good Friday, as I'm sure any Catholics probably know. And tomorrow is the Good Saturday show. So come on out and watch me tell jokes about my dog's asshole.
You can see me on Good Friday, see her on Good Saturday. Dog jokes will abound. The body part remains to be seen. Haleigh, where can the kids follow you on Twitter? Where can they find your latest work?
Yeah, I'm not a comedian, so sorry about that.
Where are you getting on stage this weekend, Haleigh?
I'm just a nerd. You can find me online. I'm on Twitter at Haleigh Foutch. I'm on Instagram at Haystack McGroovy, and you can always check out the Collider website where I run horror content and write about all the nerdy stuff all day long.
Clarke Wolfe, you are a woman of many trades. What do you got this week?
This week on Sending the Wolf, I had Joseph Scrimshaw, and we covered George Lucas's movie American Graffiti. And it was actually, it turned out to be a really, really cool, in-depth, heartfelt conversation. I'm really proud of it, and definitely check it out. And last week on Sending the Wolf, I had Rachel Cushing talking about Saving Private Ryan. So there's a lot of good content. You can find it at Sending, S-E-N-D-I-N-G, The Wolf on all your favorite podcast apps.
Joseph Scrimshaw, the fact that you had him on your show talking about George Lucas and he didn't veer into Star Wars territory, that's a monumental achievement for you as an interviewer.
We talked a lot about Star Wars. In a lot of ways, American Graffiti is a true prequel to Star Wars. And that was something that we talked, like a lot of the themes are very similar. We talked a lot about Lucas and his trajectory. It was a cool little convo. I think you guys will like it.
Say we went about the prequels. The guy's an all-time genius. You guys can check out more on the special announcement I'm about to break right now on Collider.com, and that is a Super Troopers 2 screening is going to be held, followed by a Q&A. The Q&A is going to feature the 5 Broken Lizard guys. It's going to be at the ArcLight here in Southern California at the Sherman Oaks location, Sherman Oaks ArcLight. That's going to be April 9th. So if you want to go to that, go to Collider.com right now for all the details. It literally just came out this morning, so get on that quickly if you want to be involved. We also have our top 10 Steven Spielberg movies of all time. The list keeps on chugging. We're down to number 6, I believe. Is it number 6 dropped today? A new one's coming all the time this week and next week. You can check out the best Spielberg movies of the bunch, at least according to us humble folks here at Collider.com and Collider Video. And a new Schmodown will drop later on today. It is the live Schmodown that was taped at the El Portal Theater, thanks to our friends at Full Screen Live. John Roca versus JTE. It's a big matchup. A lot of Schmodown luminaries were there. Christian and I were lucky enough to merely announce the match and the chaos that ensued. You do not want to miss that. We move on to your live Twitter questions before calling it a week here at Collider Movie Talk. And our first Twitter question comes from Chris El Guapo. And he has an interesting philosophical question. When you're talking movies and their all-time rankings, what's more dangerous, recent bias or nostalgia?
Ooh, great question.
I'll defer to you first, Clarke.
Oh no, I just was supporting the question.
It's a tough one to think about because if you look at like a movie you just saw, and you're like, I saw A Quiet Place last night. I don't know when the embargo is. So I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it, but man, do I have feelings about that movie. And then you also have the movies that I grew up with. Like I'm never gonna think that 1989 Tim Burton's Batman is a bad movie. I think it's a great Batman movie, and you cannot tell me otherwise. So for me, it might be nostalgia.
I think nostalgia could definitely, actually, again, not to shamelessly plug, but that's part of what I'm doing on my podcast is we're going back and we're looking at all of the AFI bests. And you look at these movies sometimes and you go, I really don't think this needs to be there. But I understand why it's there because at the time it did this, or people thought, or people look back at this director and they go, oh, we have to put their stuff on there. So I do think nostalgia is a very tricky thing in terms of childhood nostalgia, like you're thinking, or even previous or past acclaim and standards. So I'm going to go with nostalgia.
I think nostalgia. It's the thing with nostalgia is that it can cover up some bad things about a movie where you can still have greatness in a movie. Like there's great moments in the movies that I loved when I was a little kid, and so I'm going to remember those as opposed to the parts that you'd rather forget about. I think that it can cover up blemishes better than when you see a recent movie and you're judging it on its errors, maybe more so than its merits. Haleigh,
I'm going to fall in line here and also say nostalgia, and I think that I get what the idea is of when you've just seen something you might be overhyped about it, but I think that's honestly your honest reaction. That's what you feel in the moment. That is the movie to you. Nostalgia has time to change and evolve and, cement into something it may not actually be what your first experience was. And also, I think it's pretty clear that nostalgia is really influencing the industry in some ways that may not be the best. So, nostalgia.
It's a movie coming out this weekend that's got a little bit of nostalgia to it. Ready Player One, and I really liked it. A lot of the reason why is the nostalgia. T, do you think that nostalgia is more dangerous when you're trying to objectively rank a movie and its place in the lineage of great cinema, or is it the recent fare?
I agree. Nostalgia is way more harmful in that even when you are acknowledging that something might not be great, you sort of say you don't care. You'll be like, honestly, this movie, now that I'm an adult and rewatching it, I realize that it's got all these problems, but I don't care. I loved it when I was a kid. And you just sort of let that explain away, justifying something that probably wasn't that good to begin with. And not to mention, nostalgia is not that great a thing, period, because people have all this nostalgia for the 1950s culture. It's actually, that was a terrible time to be alive for a lot of people. Why are y'all hung up on this era in America? So I don't know. I feel like nostalgia is definitely way more dangerous than recent biases could be.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at something that is that you just saw recently, because a lot of people were saying that Wonder Woman and Logan should not be ranked as highly in Collider's superhero movie list of all time and a lot of other people's lists because we saw it so recently. So you do need the sands of time to fall for a little while before you can objectively look at a movie, I think, and place it with the greats of all time. But a lot of the reason why you have such a problem placing it amongst the greats of all time is that a lot of them you're looking at with nostalgia. So you're just screwed either way. So just enjoy the movie is the best advice I could possibly give you. Terry McGinnis is going to ask our next question. He says, what movie sparked the love and passion for film for you that led you to pursue avenues like Movie Talk or Collider or any of the other pursuits that everybody here in the panel has done, whether it's actually being involved in the making of a movie, starring in something, directing something, writing something, or working in film criticism, anything in this silly industry, T. What was the movie for you? For Terry, it was The Dark Knight.
This is going to really solidify the T is a movie douche, T is a hipster douche. But I think one of the main movies that made me actually go to film school was Aronofsky's Pi. I remember watching that movie and I was just like, I'm going to film school. Hands down. And as far as my interest in, I don't do movies like that or content like that. I'm definitely more on the comedy bent, but it did definitely sort of inspire me to actually be like, oh, you can go to school for this. Because I believe he made that either while he was still in film school, or was his first feature after he got out, and he made it on just a couple $1,000s after he graduated. So that was what made me think of going to film school as a actual thing to do, because I was just well, I don't want to have any real skills.
No real skills. That is a vast understatement when it comes to T. Can anybody name the number after 3.14 that is in pi? So you got 3.14, then what the next number is?
59?
It's 159.
159.
159. Again, useless information. This does not help you in any way, kids. Do not listen to Mark Ellis. Listen to Haleigh Foutch, your movie that made you want to do stuff like this.
Yeah, it's a twofold answer for me, and it's okay if you were a certain kind of douche. I'm going to be confirmed as the film bro douche right now. It was Jurassic Park was absolutely the first one for me. That's a formative life experience I'll never forget, seeing that with my family and understanding for the first time that movies are magic and you can do anything. And oh my God, I was just hanging out with dinosaurs. What else can I do? So that was absolutely the first one. The second one that made me want to be the horror girl was Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warriors, which I saw at a sleepover and just wrecked me, and I couldn't sleep, and then I couldn't stop thinking about it, and now it's one of my favorite movies of all time.
I'm so happy you said the Dream Warriors, because that is still the most haunting image. It's got a great song by Doc, and it's got a kick-ass soundtrack, but you also have Freddy Krueger scary in the movie, but the scariest thing about that movie is there's this creepy nun that's wearing the away nun uniform, the all-white, and she just keeps lurking around a hospital, and you're like, who the hell is that? Who is she? You find out at the end of the movie, and oh my God, it sticks with me to this day, Haleigh Foutch.
Was that Dream Warriors?
I don't know.
That was Dream Warriors. That was Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Yeah.
I don't remember the nun.
yeah.
How do I not remember the nun?
Oh my God. You're not thinking of the Dream Master, which is Nightmare on Elm Street 4.
No.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the one in the
where
mental
Nancy
hospital.
comes back and she works in the
Yeah,
hospital.
yeah.
Dude, the nun is
I don't remember the nun
my God.
at all. I
Okay.
remember all the horrible things that happened to the teenagers.
Clarke, our meeting about her is being pushed to noon because Haleigh and I have to talk about Inherent Vice, and I have to show her pictures of the nun. You will take the baton for the movie that made you want to do do stuff like this?
All right, I'm so bad because I'm not a sequel girl, so I actually am just like, I don't know. I saw Dream Warriors once. I can't help this conversation.
It's literally going to be burned into your brain for all time. Just fair warning.
Great. I'm very excited. I'm gonna weasel into this meeting. Mine was Wizard of Oz. I grew up watching movies like since day one. My parents, I think I came out of the womb and Wizard of Oz was playing on a TV somewhere. Like my earliest memories are of watching Wizard of Oz, and it's funny because it is in many ways like the perfect mashup of everything that I like when it comes. It's a big budget. It has singing and dancing. It's a fantasy. It's scary as hell, and it has a lot of great gags in it, like a lot of humor. So and it has a really sweet message at the end of the day too. So yeah, Wizard of Oz. Hands down.
Pretty good. Wizard of Oz, Jurassic Park, Pi. Y'all are just using nostalgia. I'm going to say the Nutty Professor's movie. I remember sitting in a theater and just watching it make so many different people laugh. It was a packed theater, and that movie was like, that was more of like I want to be a comic than it was like host a movie show. But seeing the power of what movies can do to people, that and Liar Liar are my humble answers. God,
Eddie Murphy's the Nutty Professor.
Eddie Murphy's the Nutty Professor, yeah. It
Just
wasn't
making
like,
sure.
hey kids, remember Jerry Lewis? Let's all pack into a theater and go see that. It's a fine version of Nutty Professor, but no, I mean, what Eddie Murphy did as Sherman Klump / Buddy Love in that movie and the entire Klump family is an achievement that I don't know will ever be surpassed in a comedic form. That is going to do it for us here for today and for this week. Humbled to be here for the beleaguered Sinead DeFries. Get back on your feet soon, Sinead. We love you. Get back soon. Get well soon. Have a lot of donuts. They're great when you are under the weather. For T, Haleigh Foutch, and classy Clarke Wolfe, we'll see you guys next week on an all-new Collider Movie Talk. Hey everybody, Mark Ellis here. Thanks for watching this episode of Collider Movie Talk. You want to watch more? Then click up here, or you can click right here for more great content from Collider. And if you haven't subscribed to Collider Video, do so right now and share this vid with your friends. Thanks for watching.